happened when I was 11 years old. At that age, I was a restless kid, a bit of a troublemaker, always pushing boundaries. One of my worst habits was staying up way too late at night. While everyone else in the house was asleep, I'd sit in my room, reading, drawing, or just letting my imagination wander. My room was positioned in a strange way. If you opened the door even a little, it faced directly into the main corridor of our house. And that corridor, it always unsettled me. It was long, unusually long for a house like ours, and at night, not a single light reached inside it. It was pure darkness, like a tunnel swallowing anything that stepped into it. That night, I sat at my desk, sketching in my drawing album, trying to ignore the silence of the house. The scratching of my pencil against the paper was the only sound in the room. At some point, for no particular reason, I turned toward my door, and that's when I saw it. In the corridor stood something. Someone. It was about the height of an 8 or 9-year-old child. But the longer I stared, the more I realized that what I was seeing wasn't quite right. The figure wasn't shaped like a normal kid. It looked as though it was perched or standing on top of a long, sagging red bag, like some heavy cloth stretched out beneath it. At first, my brain refused to accept it. I blinked hard, rubbed my eyes, looked away, and looked back again. But it didn't vanish. It was still there, motionless, just standing. That was the moment a thought hit me, sharp and terrifying. What if this isn't my imagination at all? My throat went dry. I didn't scream, didn't call for help. I just froze in place, my back prickling with goosebumps. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear the blood in my ears. I forced myself to turn back toward my desk, pretending to keep drawing, pretending I hadn't just seen what I saw. But no matter how hard I tried to focus on the paper, my mind screamed, "It's still there, right outside your door, watching you." For what felt like forever, the house was silent. And then, footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps echoing faintly down the far end of the corridor. My stomach twisted. I didn't want to turn around. I didn't want to know if those steps belonged to it. But then the sound grew clearer, familiar. It was my mother. She had woken up, probably because she noticed the light from my room. She walked down the hall, entered my doorway, and found me sitting wide-eyed at my desk. She scolded me, like always, for being awake when I should have been asleep. I glanced past her shoulder into the corridor. Nothing. Empty. To this day, I don't know what I saw that night. I've never seen it again. But sometimes I still think about that red bag, the child-sized figure standing on it, and the way it didn't disappear no matter how much I wanted it to. It was the middle of July, one of those heavy summer nights where the air feels too thick to breathe. The cicadas were screaming in the trees, filling the silence with their endless chatter. Ethan and his 2 friends had decided to sneak out after midnight, just to wander around the outskirts of their sleepy town. They carried flashlights, but most of the time, they were off, letting their eyes adjust to the dark. The streets were empty, the houses quiet. Everyone else was asleep, but the farther they walked, the quieter things became. Even the cicadas seemed to fade away, leaving only the crunch of gravel under their shoes. They ended up at the edge of the woods, near an abandoned summer camp. The place had been shut down years ago after a drowning in the lake. At least, that was the story people whispered. The camp looked like it hadn't been touched in decades. Broken cabins, rusted swings, and the lake, still as glass under the moonlight. Ethan shivered. "Why is it so quiet?" he whispered. They all froze. The lake was empty. No fish, no breeze. but something had disturbed the surface. Probably a frog, one friend muttered, but his voice shook. Then, from across the water, came a sound. The boy's blood ran cold. The camp had been abandoned for over 20 years. No kids should have been there. Ethan raised his flashlight, but the beam barely cut across the water. That's when they noticed it. Something standing on the opposite shore. A figure. Small. Motionless. Watching them. "Turn it off," one of them hissed. Ethan clicked the flashlight off. Darkness swallowed them whole. For a moment, nothing. Just silence. Then, they ran. Their footsteps thundered across the dirt path, lungs burning as the night air turned icy cold. Behind them, the splashing stopped. But the laughter followed, louder now, right behind their ears. Finally, the glow of a streetlight broke through the trees. They sprinted toward it, bursting out of the woods and collapsing onto the road. The air was warm again. The cicadas buzzed like nothing had happened. For a long moment, none of them spoke. Then, all at once, they laughed nervously. The kind of laugh you make when you're just glad to be alive. "We're safe," Ethan gasped. "We actually made it out." But when he looked back, just before they left, he saw the lake through the trees, perfectly still under the moonlight. And on the shore, the figure was gone. My parents had shared custody of me since I was a baby. I never had a favorite parent, but I always preferred living with my mom. By 7th grade, I was getting into trouble almost every day. Calls home, emails, suspensions. It all piled up. One day, my mom finally lost her patience and sent me to stay with my dad for the summer. At the time, he was in Connecticut with his new wife and her family. They didn't have a house yet, so we stayed with her parents in an old, fragile home that looked like it had been standing for centuries. The place always creaked at night. At first, I thought nothing of it. Old houses make noises. But soon, I noticed it happened at the exact same time, every night. One night, I got tired of it. I stepped out of my room, expecting to find a leaky AC unit or just wood shifting. Instead, I found something else. At the end of the hallway stood a figure, about the height of an adult, but too still, too dark. It didn't move. It didn't breathe. It just stood there, facing me. My pulse quickened. I backed into my room, shut the door, and crawled under the covers. But when I turned to face the doorway again, it was there, standing at the edge of my bed. I froze. Tears slid down my face. It didn't move closer. It didn't speak. It only watched. And then it kept coming back, night after night, the same time, always in the same spot. But it didn't stay confined to the night. Soon I saw it in the kitchen, in the living room, in the corner of my eye, no matter where I went. When the summer finally ended, I thought I'd escape it. But during the 5-hour car ride back to my mom's, it followed. On the side of the road, reflected in the windows. At one point, it appeared in the back seat, right beside me, and then it attacked. The figure dissolved into smoke and seeped into my arm. Pain exploded through me, like a knife carving deep into my skin. I screamed until my throat burned. By the time it stopped, there was a long, bloody gash carved across my arm. The doctors couldn't explain it. My mom questioned why I suddenly feared blood when I never had before. My dad stayed silent. We both did. But even after leaving Connecticut, it didn't leave me. I still see it. Sometimes far away, sometimes in my dreams, sometimes standing closer than it ever has before. And though I've grown used to its presence, I know one thing. It never left. It's still here, waiting, watching. I grew up in a small town surrounded by woods. Behind my house was an old dirt path that led deep into the trees. Nobody really went down there anymore. People said it was haunted, but as a kid, I thought that was just a story adults told to keep us out. One summer night, when I was about 15, I couldn't sleep. The house was too hot, too quiet. I decided to sneak outside just to walk, just to clear my head. The moon was full, and the woods behind my house were glowing silver. Without thinking, my feet carried me toward that old path. The deeper I went, the quieter the night became. The sound of bugs, frogs, even the wind in the leaves. It all seemed to vanish. After a while, I noticed something strange. The air felt heavier, and I began to hear it, breathing, not mine, not human. Something low, ragged, and unsteady. I stopped walking, straining to listen. The sound stopped too. I stood there frozen, heart pounding, when I saw it. Up ahead, in the clearing, a figure. Pale, thin, almost skeletal. Its limbs were far too long, its head tilted unnaturally to one side. It didn't move. It just stood, as if it had been waiting. I wanted to turn back. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't move. Then, without a sound, the figure raised its arm and pointed directly at me. I stumbled backward, finally forcing myself to run. Branches whipped against my face, dirt kicked beneath my shoes, but no matter how fast I went, I could hear it following. The ragged breathing grew closer, closer, until it felt like it was right at my ear. When I burst out of the woods and into my yard, I collapsed, gasping for air. The night sounds returned. Crickets, frogs, wind through the leaves, like nothing had happened. But when I turned back toward the path, something was standing at the edge of the trees, watching. The next night, I locked every door, shut every curtain. But around midnight, I woke to the sound of breathing right outside my window. I pulled the covers over my head, shaking, waiting for it to pass. Minutes dragged by like hours. Finally, the sound faded. But that was only the beginning. For weeks after, it didn't matter where I went. My room, the kitchen, even school. Out of the corner of my eye, I would see it. The pale figure, always standing just far enough away. Never moving, never speaking, only watching. One night, I gathered enough courage to whisper into the dark, "What do you want?" The answer came in a voice I couldn't understand. Words twisted, broken. My blood ran cold. Since then, it's never left. I don't walk the woods anymore. I don't go outside at night. But sometimes, when the house is quiet, and I think I'm finally safe, I hear it again, standing just behind me.